Welcome everybody to National Building Expert, Ask the Building Expert series of webinars. And these webinars are presented free, and it's to help you get more information on building and construction related issues. If you have any topics you want us to cover, please send us an email and let us know. We'll be happy to consider it for future webinars. Also, if you have any questions pertaining to this webinar, you can several ways use the chat feature, or you could use the Q&A feature. If you want to ask your question live, use the raise hand icon and we'll get your microphone turned on, and we can engage in a live chat. So once again, thank you everyone for attending. Those of you that are in Hawaii, the United States, and if you're attending from anywhere outside the US, we'd be happy to welcome you, especially in different countries that are participating, because the topic in these webinars are basically apropos to any kind of building, regardless whether it's in the US or any place around the world. It's pretty much same building components and same construction methods, and things are very much similar. So welcome again. This is put on by the National Building Expert, which is me, Lance Luke, and also my company, Construction Management Inspection, which is located in Honolulu, Hawaii. This series is actually to help everyone, including homeowners, building owners, condo associations, property managers, real estate developers, real estate attorneys, and basically anyone who's interested in our topics. So we have an interesting topic today titled Railing Failure Issues, and we'll be covering different components of railing, basically metal railing as opposed to other types. And that's the focus today. We'll be talking mainly about metal railing. So let's go right into it. The main types of railing, and there's actually two main types. When people say railing, what do they really mean? So here's the two common types of railing. There's what's called hand railing. So at stairs or steps, you have a railing to grab onto, and that's called hand railing. When you have a landing, a flat area that's not elevated, there's no steps, that's called a guard railing. So there's a difference between the definition of the two types. So if you look at the photo on the left, that's taken at a shopping center, a parking deck, and there's stairs. So you go up the stairs and there's hand railing, and the guard railing is actually from the hand railing elevation down to where the floor level is. That's guard railing. And there could be guard railing on your steps, but then when you get to the top landing, there's a guard railing to protect people from, falling off. So that's the difference. If you look at the photo on the right, that's a landing area for, I guess, outdoor lanai or something like that. And that's really considered a guard railing as opposed to an actual hand railing. Although the top rail of the guard railing where you can put your hands, that's considered a handrail also. Okay, so that's the two types. Now, what is the most common railing design? And we're talking about metal railing, right? So if you look at the image on the left, that's called a surface mounted railing design, because the base of the railing is not penetrating through the floor material. It's just mounted to the floor using a base plate. So that's called surface mounted. The other type is called embedded, where your railing post actually sits inside the concrete. And so it's not surface mounted, it's embedded inside the concrete. So if you look at the photo on the right, the base of the railing is actually inside the concrete. And we'll talk more about the failure issues as we go further through the webinar. So the two main most common railing designs are surface mounted and embedded. So when you walk around at a shopping center or office building or condo apartment building or hotel, look at the railing and determine whether it's a surface mounted type or an embedded railing. Okay, that's a good lesson. Now, what are the specific causes of railing failure? Okay, there could be any number of components or reasons why the railing fails. It could be due to a design issue where the railing was not properly designed. Maybe it should have been designed stronger, but it wasn't. It could be due to fabrication where it was made and some components were not made correctly. Another causes of railing failure could be installation. The railing could have been installed improperly. And the other cause would be material. If they didn't use good material, it was inferior, and that's what caused the metal to prematurely corrode or rust or bend a certain way and contribute to some kind of failure. And this photo is of a high-rise building, a condo building. And as you can see, each unit has lanais, and so they have extensive railing. If you kind of look closer at maybe the second floor on the left, you see that brown stains at the base, and that's due to corrosion of the metal. So some more specific causes of railing failure. So here we have a aluminum railing, and the aluminum is hollow. The frames are all hollow, and the railing base posts are hollow. The top rail is hollow, and then these intermediate pickets are also hollow. And what happens is these pickets, the attachment, the screws that are used start corroding, and then these pickets start coming loose. So as you can see, the middle picket is totally loose, not attached to the top rail. And then the other two to the left are also pretty much loose too. And what happens is these pickets are there for a purpose. So a pet or a small kid can't fall through. But then if you have 3 pickets missing, that's a big enough space for an adult human to fall through too. So it becomes a very dangerous situation. And once again, there's metal components that corrode, and that's what causes the failure. So it's been known that aluminum doesn't corrode, it doesn't rust like iron or steel and that type of metal. But believe it or not, it does contribute the corrosion factor of aluminum. It's called white rust. So in my opinion, there is deterioration on the aluminum, and a lot of scientists say that that's not really corrosion, but whatever it is, whatever you call it, it's degrading the components. And most times, it's not the corrosion of the aluminum per se, but fastener, like a screw. So the screw could be a different material, like galvanized or stainless steel, and that's what is corroding, not the aluminum itself. So let's say that you have a wooden railing. And what's the cause of the failure? Well, wood rot. As you can see in the photo, there's these pickets that have just gone missing. And what happens is over time, the nail or screw hole gets bigger because when it rains, the water collects at those locations. And then right around the surround area of the screw or nail, you have water entering and rotting the wood. And then that hole gets bigger. And then what happens when the hole gets bigger, the nail or the screw isn't doing their job. And then you have these pickets that aren't secured. And then they just, that whole bottom or top section of the rail gets, the picket gets rotted out, and then it just, falls over. So this is a photo of a townhouse, 3 stories. So can you imagine if a kid fell through? So this is not a good condition. It's unsafe, and it's actually uh, a building code violation to have it like this. So if you're managing residential property, wood frame townhouses or apartment buildings, be aware of this condition. It doesn't last forever. Always have it inspected. Some more causes of railing failure. Actually, in some cases, it may not be the railing itself. It may be concrete spalling. And what happens is water gets into the concrete. And when water gets in, there's reinforcing steel called rebar in the concrete. It comes into contact with the water and moisture. It starts corroding and it starts expanding. And when that metal steel expands, it cracks the concrete around it because the metal is stronger than concrete. And that's what causes concrete spalling. You have cracking first. You don't normally see the rust stains, but you may see cracks first and then the rust stains. By the way, this railing in the photo is a vinyl railing. And inside those big posts that's connected to the concrete, they have metal in there, and the metal is corroding. And if you can look at the far left, you see all that brown rust stains. That's the metal corroding that's inside that 4x4 vinyl post there. So there's telltale signs that we look at when we do our inspection. So in this situation, the cause of the problem is not necessarily a railing failure. It's more of a concrete spalling issue, but the railing component, that metal that's inside that post is corroding. So you could say that it's a contributing factor to the failure of the railing as well as the concrete. Continuing on specific causes of railing failure, you have the base of the railing that normally gets corroded first, because what happens is it's sitting on a concrete shelf or a concrete curb. And when it rains, the water collects right at the base of that metal railing post. So if you look at the photo on the left, you have a hollow metal railing, and the bottom where it's embedded into the concrete, water collects there, and you see all that brown area, that's corrosion. What's happening is the metal that's inside the concrete is corroded because of moisture. And then what happens is you have the base of the railing is so corroded that it basically can snap off, or somebody pushes it, the whole railing can topple over. Okay, so remember that railing post is hollow. If you look on the photo on the right, that's aluminum railing as opposed to a steel post. So this railing is also embedded because you don't see any base plate for surface mounted. So the bottom of that post actually extends maybe an inch or two into the concrete slab. Okay, and this is a lanai. So the railing, once again, is hollow. That post is hollow. And what happens over time is humidity builds up, And inside that metal, it's hollow, and water collects at the bottom, either from humidity or if it rains and there's like a crack right at the base post of the concrete, water starts seeping in, and then um, it doesn't necessarily corrode the aluminum, but it starts creating spalling because water's just sitting there. So can you imagine you have a hotel or a condominium building that has 300 lanais, and every one of these posts are corroded, but you can't see it. It's actually inside the concrete. So every lanai could have, 5, 6, 10 different posts. So if you have 300 units, you multiply that by the number of posts, and there's your problem on a grand scale. So to correct this, because aluminum railing lasts a long time, so to correct this problem, we call it a drill and fill method, where we drill holes in the post and we inject a self-leveling compound in there, and we fill up the bottom of the post. Once that's done, then you don't have moisture sitting at the bottom um, of the railing post with the concrete. Okay, right now it's hollow, so you have an area where water can collect. So over time, we developed the system and we figured out what the problem was, and then also how to correct it. Now, that's in lieu of having to replace your entire railing, which could cost several hundred thousands or even over $1 million, depends on the size of the building. Let's talk about some building code requirements. Um, what are the code requirements? Well, the building code requirements dictate the height of your railing, okay? And it doesn't matter whether it's a guardrail or a handrail, and it doesn't matter what type of material. It could be wood, it could be metal, it could be vinyl. Every different material has to follow the exact same code requirements with respect to the height of the railing, and then also the rail and the picket spacing. Now, when I talk about rail, either it's a handrail or a guardrail, and the term rail is used, like if you look at the picture, the term rail would be used like at the top. So if you're looking at a horizontal section of any of these components on the top, that's called a rail. And then at the bottom, that's also called a rail. So there's a top rail and there's a bottom rail. Now, if you look at um, the pickets that are inside, the building code requires that the picket spacing be not more than 4 inches. So in other words, if you took a tape measure and you measured between the space between the pickets, it should not be more than 4 inches. And the common um, determination is, if you have a tennis ball and the tennis ball is 4 inches, if the tennis ball can fall through, then that space is larger than 4 inches. But you don't want to be carrying around a tennis ball, with you. So the other factor is, if you look at the bottom rail, between the bottom rail and your lanai or floor slab, okay, you cannot have that space greater than 4 inches. So that 4 inch criteria applies to picket spacing or the spacing between your lanai floor and the bottom of your rail. It also applies to the spacing between your picket and your posts too. And then the height should be about 36 inches. And these are building requirements new. Now, older buildings may not follow this, and that's considered a grandfathered condition. But then there's a difference between a grandfathered condition and whether the condition is safe or not. So even if it was grandfathered, but it becomes unsafe because pickets are missing, then already that's a bad condition. Okay, so I got another image to show you. So when we're talking about a grabbable handrail, that means the handrail is easy to grab. And believe it or not, there's actually building code requirements that govern grabbing a handrail. So in other words, you cannot have a 2x4 as your handrail because it's hard to grab. Okay, so it has to be easily grabbable. Can you imagine if there's a small kid or an elderly person and the handrail is hard to grab? That becomes unsafe, right? So the building code dictates the measurements of your handrail. And then this is another image just to show you what I was talking about earlier. If you look at those the green balls, I guess they could be tennis balls. They should not be able to go through the spacing between the pickets and between the bottom rail. Of course, this is a wood frame railing, but the same situation also applies to metal, vinyl, or any other kind of building material. That you may have. That's a condition. Now, some buildings do not have these types of railing. They have maybe a CMU block tile wall instead, or a poured-in-place concrete wall, and that would be in lieu of this type of railing. So they call that a railing wall because there's not too many holes in it. Let's talk a little about inspection and maintenance programs now for um, protection of your railing. Number one, there should be proper inspections completed. And how often are you supposed to inspect the railing? Well, you can go by your maintenance program, and hopefully if you're working in or responsible or managing buildings, there is a maintenance program. If not, I think you should incorporate one in your overall property inspection and maintenance schedule. So inspections are always good. And then there's a preventive maintenance program, and hopefully you have one, because the idea is to maintain it and repair it before it totally breaks. Because what happens when it totally breaks is now it becomes very costly. So a few dollars spent to prevent something is good savings, as opposed to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars when you have to replace that component. So if you look at the photo on the right, this is a metal railing where the bottom pickets are corroding, and what they're doing is they grind the rust off and to bare metal, and then they treat it with the anti-corrosion kind of treatment. And then after that, they paint it. So if you continually do that, that extends the lifespan of that component. If you forget or just neglect to do that, then you end up spending a lot of money having to replace the railing, because if it gets so bad, the condition, that it's impossible to repair it, you have to replace it. Now, here's a tip. If your building is located in an area close to the ocean, it's going to get um, the lifespan is decreased just because of the salt air factor. Weather, rain, sun, humidity, salt air, it causes more damage and accelerates the damage just because of that location. So that's something to be aware of. Also, if you're in an area where you have trade winds, it's windy and it blows the salt air inland. Even if you're miles away, we could see the same condition on buildings as if the building was located right on the ocean. So keep that in mind. inspection and maintenance programs. Here we have a condo building where um, they didn't maintain anything and they had to totally rebuild every single lanai slab. When you have to rebuild something, it really costs a lot of money, especially if the building's built yet. So it costs more to rebuild an existing building than it is to build brand new. So in other words, if this building was brand new, the cost to build these concrete slabs are one price. But when the building is already built and the contractor has to come in and now rebuild those slabs, it's a way harder. Because when you're building a new building, you have a tower crane and it just brings the concrete to whatever floor you need to. In this situation, it's rough because there's no tower crane anymore. So now you got to go to plan B, and how are you going to get the concrete up there? So that's just something interesting. So let's talk about some case studies, actual lawsuits. This one I worked on, and the largest shopping center in Hawaii. And if you look at the photo, it's a metal pipe, a hollow pipe. And if you look at the base, okay, is this embedded railing or is this a surface mounted? Okay, you don't see any base plate there. So it looks like the pipe is sitting inside or going into the concrete curb. So in this case, it's an embedded railing and it's embedded into the concrete curb. But if you look at the base of it, you can see that it's totally corroded. Okay, and at one time they did put caulking around because over time there's this space that develops between the base of the post and the concrete, and water gets in. So to seal that, you put caulking around it. But what happens is, if the pipe is already corroded, it doesn't make sense to caulk over the corrosion and then paint it, and then it looks good as new after that. But guess what? It's not, because the inside of that pipe is already corroded. And what happens too is water starts getting in where that space is, and now you have concrete spalling. So the problem that happened at this shopping center, and two people were leaning on the railing, the railing collapsed, and the two individuals fell 3 stories, and one person died, and the other one was injured for life. So that's not a good situation. Now, what happened was, um, the lawsuit got settled, but it was a case of you have to prove that this condition was there, and the uh, owner knew it was there and didn't do much to mitigate the problem. So, and if you're interested, I can talk to you more about the details of how this all happened and all that. Okay, this photo is a condo building, and the whole lanai had collapsed with the railing. I guess the railing had just fallen over too. So um, this is not a good situation. And I think the story was that they didn't do proper inspections, and then the wood that the railing was sitting on rotted out. And when the wood rots out, there's basically nothing to hold the railing up. So somebody pushes on it, then the whole thing gives way. So um, what happens on accidents like this, engineers come in and they start investigating. There's insurance people, and they're trying to determine first what the cause of the problem was, and then um, why did the railing fall over, because at this point, especially when people get injured, there's always lawsuits, and um, it has to be proven what the cause of the problem was. Why did the people fall over? They fell over because the railing collapsed. Well, why did the railing collapse? Well, it collapsed because of certain factors. One, the wood rotted out. Two, it was improper design in the first place. Those kind of things. So it gets kind of hectic when there's lawsuits. And then this is the last one. This is a apartment building where somehow the railing had failed. But as you can see, the railing looks pretty thick. There's big components, and I guess it wasn't constructed properly. Could be lack of maintenance too. But the weird thing about it is that if you look at the components of the building, you see the small bricks at the wall and the building wall, and then you look at the railing. It's made of like different kind of material. So I don't know if that's the initial design to begin with, or it just looks quite odd to me. And I'm not sure, like at the hard to see from this photo, but I'm not sure if the railing base was surface mounted or was embedded. And definitely looks like there was some big problems there. So I'm not sure how this thing, what the result was, but I've actually read a lot of studies from all over the United States and even around the world regarding um, collapse of balcony lanais and railing failure. And I've seen a bunch in California and read the reports and all that. And a lot of times on wood frame, it's just was not designed properly, or it didn't have waterproofing, enough waterproofing, or there was a failure of waterproofing due to lack of maintenance or a design problem. And they combine lack of maintenance with the design problem, with the construction workmanship and all that. And, that's the reason why. And then in a court case, it's determined what percentages go to each factor and each cause. So for instance, um, lack of maintenance or no maintenance, what percentage of due to lack of maintenance is attributed to the problem? What percentage of poor design? What percentage of construction, bad construction, led to the failure? So, in a court case, all these things are factors. The other thing to take into consideration is was this um, railing built to code? If it was following the building code, then that's good. So there must be another factor uh, to contribute to the failure. So if the um, component was not built to code, then already that's a big red flag, because in a court case in construction defect, if it can be proven that the contribution was that the component was not built to code, already you can point fingers at the responsible parties. Yeah, it gets kind of hectic. Okay, I think that's about it for the presentation. I know I went through kind of fast, but I got a couple more slides here. Um, so you want to be uh, proactive rather than reactive. Now, what does that mean? That means that you want to take steps to maintain the property. You want to take steps to inspect the property. In this case, we're talking about railings. So don't ignore the railing. Have inspections done. Otherwise, it could be you could be in a situation where now you're reacting. Why are you reacting? Because maybe you got served with a lawsuit, or maybe because somebody got hurt, or maybe you get a notice of violation from your local building department. So the the key here is you want to take steps so that you don't get into a lawsuit and you don't get a violation notice from the building department. Now, how do you do that? Well, you make sure that your building and railing is inspected periodically, and if there's things to be fixed, those items get fixed right away. You don't wait. Um, the problem with waiting is someone can get hurt and sue, or it's just going to cost more and more money to fix the problem where it could have been fixed for cheap initially. Okay, and I know that there's so many condo buildings, apartment buildings, and no one ever inspects their railing at all. They just think it's there, it's going to last forever, and um, let's ignore it. But you can't do that because no building component lasts forever. It doesn't matter what the manufacturer says, because I go out in the field and I see this all the time. So that wraps up the actual formal part of the webinar. I know we went through it fairly briefly, and probably because of that, there might be questions, and I hope there is, because this is Ask the Building Expert series. Now, before I entertain questions, I just want to invite you guys to attend the next series of webinars that we'll be talking about premises liability, avoid the lawsuits. We'll be talking about painting issues, plumbing things, and every one of our webinars are designed to educate and inform and also entertain regarding that specific subject. And we base our information on my own experience. I've been in the construction field for 40 years. So over time, I developed all this information and I'm happy to share it. And then we also do a lot of research. So if we're talking about a certain subject, like say, today we're talking about railing on this webinar, I actually talk with other railing people, railing manufacturers, contractors who install railing, and I gather all the information. So it's interesting to get all the information from other experts in the industry and combine it with my own experience and my own photos that I take and able to show you throughout my career as a construction engineer. And you can take a look at these photos, and it's very helpful, or hopefully it is. So stay tuned for upcoming webinars. And once again, if you have any other topics you want us to cover, please reach out to us, and we'll be happy to consider it. Right now, we have about two webinars per month through the rest of the year, and we have topics for all through next year. But we'll be happy to change the schedule around, depends on the hot topics that are out there today. So I'll ask Martin, who's a back-end guy, helping making sure our webinars run correctly and the Zoom features are all working. And I'll reach out to Martin to see if anybody of our attendees have any questions about railing or anything else. Martin.
Hey, Lance, I'm here. We don't have anybody raising the hand. I guess nobody wants to talk with you direct today, but
well, you know what? Actually, after the webinar, some people email me or they call me up and they say, "Oh, I was on your webinar. I got a question." I said, "Why did you ask me during the webinar?" "Oh, I didn't want to. I thought it was a dumb question, or I just thought of the question now, or something." But anyway, either way, ask your question now, or you can email or call us up. We're good guys. We're available to help. Our main thing is trying to help people get to where they need. We also want to prevent anybody from getting hurt. We're always concerned about building safety, health and safety, and we're here to prevent any problems. So we're just trying to be helpful people. So
Yeah,
maybe you got a couple of questions where people
yeah,
didn't want to
yeah.
ask
Actually,
what they.
even though we have a quiet, shy crowd, we have several that have put questions in the chat. So let me share some of those with you now. Yeah. The first one I get here is, I live in a condo and my railing looked old and had drips of paint on it. I painted my railing with permission from the previous manager, and now the resident manager is making a big deal about it. Was I wrong to paint it?
Interesting. Did you say that this person is in a condo?
Yeah, he said I live in a condo. Yeah.
Okay, well, actually, it doesn't matter whether they live in a condo or apartment um, building. The but it's not an easy question to answer, and here's the reason why. Because generally, in a condo building, the unit owner does not own the railing. It's actually a component of the building, and it's called a common element or a limited common element. But in the cases where the condo documents, the governing documents state that the railing belongs to the unit owner, then basically the unit owner can do um, whatever they want with the exception of following certain guidelines. So, for example, if the railing is determined that it belongs to the unit or the unit owner, then yes, the unit owner should be allowed to paint it, provided that they follow the building guidelines. So in other words, the building might say, if you're going to paint your railing, you can only paint it these colors, which are the colors of the building. So let's say the building colors are green uh, and brown. Okay, you can't go ahead and paint your railing purple or pink, right? So you have to follow the guidelines. But in most cases, the railing is considered a limited common element, which is not owned by the unit owner. And in that case, the unit owner would not have the right to paint it. But if the manager gave permission, then that would be something that the owner could say, well, I did get permission, but here's the kicker. Um, I would ask, okay, if I was the manager, I would say, can you show me a letter in writing from the manager that gave you permission to paint it? If they cannot produce the letter, then I would say, well, sorry, even if the manager said that, you weren't supposed to paint it. The other side of the coin is, let's say that they did get permission. Okay, the question that I would ask as a building expert and building consultant would be, um, what was the condition of the railing before you painted it? Did you do any prep work to the railing? Did you use primer? And what kind of paint did you use? Because all these are contributing factors to getting to the bottom of the situation. So, for instance, you have an owner that painted their railing. Okay, now what happens if the paint starts peeling off? Who's responsible then? If the railing is part of the building, wouldn't it be the building's responsibility? Yeah, but if the unit owner painted it themselves, then the building could say, well, unit owner, it's peeling, so you better go fix it. So there's a number of factors that come into play. So it's not an easy answer to give, but I would try to get something in writing because you sure don't want to be responsible for having to um, strip the paint off. How are you going to strip the paint off on an aluminum, railing? That's kind of difficult. So, yeah, that's kind of a interesting situation. So hopefully, uh, you do have something in writing, but if not, maybe try to talk to the manager and see what could be done. Okay, that's good.
Okay, Lance, good answer. Yeah, always get get documentation. Yeah. The next question here is, it says, I'm an architect designing a new apartment building. In your opinion, which is the better type of railing design, surface mounted or embedded? Techie question.
Okay, that's interesting. You know what? I would, as an architect, I would defer to the structure engineer and say, what do you think, Mr. Structure Engineer or Mrs. Structural Engineer? Um, if not, the engineer might say, hey, you're the architect, you design it, and then I'll go take a look at it. But I can tell you this, that most of the buildings today are built with embedded railing, as far as what I see. Although, let me clarify that when I go to the mainland and I stay at these different hotels and I look at other buildings, there's a bunch of them that actually have um, surface mounted railing. But the surface mounted railing to me are in the so-called cheaper um, motels or cheaper buildings, not the higher end. If you go to like the expensive hotels, I haven't seen any surface mounted railing. They're all embedded. So I would say embedded for security purposes and longevity is the way to go, because when you have surface mounted, once the building is built, you're not going to know how these people are going to maintain the property. And a lot of times we presume that um, there's not going to be qualified maintenance or preventive maintenance being done. In fact, I can tell you for a fact that when I inspect thousands of apartment buildings and condo buildings and even some hotels and office buildings that have railing, the majority, I would say at least 85% is not maintained correctly. So with that in mind, and you're not, as an architect, you're not responsible after the building's built to to make sure that the owner maintains the building. But you may want to put together a document with all the maintenance, repair and maintenance requirements, so that you give it over to the owner, and then now they got to follow that. And if something happens and they didn't maintain it, then it's hard for them to go back to you, as an architect and blame you for the problem. Okay, unless it was a gross design flaw or errors and omissions with respect to the designing of the building. Yeah, so I would say your best bet would be embedded. Of course, embedded is more expensive as construction, but yeah, that's my opinion. But yeah, thanks for tuning in.
Okay, good answer, Lance. The next question we have is, looks like maybe a tourist or something like that, but how often do railings need to be inspected by hotel maintenance workers? And can the workers repair the railing?
Oh, so you think a tourist asked the question?
And they're probably listening in or whatever, so checking you out from Waikiki someplace.
Gee, I thought they would be on vacation going to the beach. But anyway, maybe you're quarantined. So yeah, so thanks for tuning into the webinar. So actually, it's an interesting question. Um, First, okay, I would defer to the building manufacturer as to what they recommend for inspections and for preventive maintenance. And I can tell you, I've read hundreds of manuals on railing, and it even tells you what to use, what kind of cloth to use, what product to use to um, wipe the railing down with and all that. And I don't think many owners actually follow these instructions, but the instructions are made for a purpose, because if there's failure, the question would be, well, did you use a a clean cloth and a smooth cloth to wipe down the railing? What product did you use to clean the railing with? Aha, you use that. That's not our recommended product. No wonder the thing failed. Okay, so sometimes a building is 30 years old and there's no manual. Okay, so I would say inspect the railing at least once a year. If it's a way older building and you have a history of railing problems, then inspect every 6 months. And when I say inspect, just don't go outside of the hotel and then you're at the beach and you're looking up at the railing and look at each one and go, oh, it looks good to me. A formal inspection and a proper inspection is you enter each hotel room. And by the way, this information applies to not only hotels, but condo units and apartments. You go into each unit, you go on the lanai, and you inspect the railing. You do a visual inspection of the railing, look for any concrete spalling or any holes around the bases or cracks or anything. And then, grab the railing and lightly kind of shake it back and forth. And if it's solid, it doesn't move, okay, good. If you have slight movement and there's flex in it, then you should note it down and put it on the list for an expert to check it out. And I don't care if the hotel has 1,200 units. Every hotel room needs to be inspected. And that should be on the list. So this not only applies to Waikiki hotels, it applies to hotels and condo buildings, any kind of building, because there's a lot of office buildings and shopping centers that also have railing too. So that just applies. So if you are from out of town and you're quarantined, thank you. If you're not, I looked out and it's a sunny day, so go to the beach or go shopping and enjoy yourself. Thank you.
Good answer, Lance. The next question is on the large shopping center accident, which sounds like our Ala Moana shopping center. This person said, I saw you being interviewed on the news. So local person checking us out today. Can you tell us how the local building department got involved and what they did?
What was that at the end?
Oh, the question here was, can you tell us how the local building department got involved and what they did?
Oh, okay. So do you think that they're asking for inside information?
I don't know. Well, considering what's happening now with that group over there, maybe, yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm willing to give you inside information because you guys are all here attending, and we really appreciate it. So what happened was there was a failure, there was an accident, and then it was such a big deal that the local building department got involved. Now, normally, the building department inspectors don't go around looking for problems and issuing citations. They only go to the property when there's a complaint. Okay, so they don't have the time or energy to be driving around like cops or investigators. Well, even the cops don't have time either, but that's not what they do. They don't go hunting for problems. Okay, let's put it that way. So they have enough work, and so they don't want to go looking for problems. But what happens is when there's a complaint, they're obligated by law to investigate the complaint. And a lot of times the complaints are nothing, and sometimes there are. So in this case, what happened was it was kind of political, okay, because during that time it was a election year, so the mayor got involved, and what happened was the building department, the building inspectors had to go out there to look at the the problem. And what was the result of that? The result was that they issued a notice of violation called an NOV, which is, I call it a citation, a violation notice. And the components of that violation notice, and anytime the building department issues a NOV, notice of violation, they cite the section of the building code that is not being followed or that there's a violation of. Okay, so they cite the section of the building code. And in this case, the citation had to do with not repairing and maintaining the property correctly, and the lack of maintenance and repair caused the railing corrosion and concrete spalling. So basically, that's what happened. So there was so much pressure on the city building department to do something about it. That's what happened. And along with the notice of violation, they had to tell the shopping center, you need to correct this within 90 days, 120 days, or whatever. So that forces the building owner to take action now. Because a lot of times owners, they just don't want to take action on their own. So this was like a hammer over their head. So they had to hire structural engineers and inspectors to go out and assess the problem, come up with a repair plan, and give it to the shopping center. And the shopping center had to hire a contractor to, fix the problem. So it was all these different steps. I was there on site watching. I was there after the accident, and then I was there while railings were being corrected. And I was there, talking to the engineers and people who are looking at it and coming up with a solution. So that's what happened. I think if the city building department did not issue a citation, maybe the shopping center would have moved a little slower. But I mean, there was pressure not only from the city, but from other people, I guess, including myself, to get the problem fixed. So that's a little inside information. By the way, anytime the city building department issues a notice of violation, that's public record that anybody can get easily. Well, it might not be so easy, but I have a copy. So anyway, interesting question. We got any other questions?
Yeah, Lance, we get two more. Hopefully you get time for. The next one here is, the spaces between my lanai railing are large, so I attached orange netting so my dog does not fall through. I got a letter from the property management company telling me to remove it. Can I tell them that I attended your webinar and you said that it is not safe?
Okay. Yeah, tell them that you attended my webinar and I said it wasn't safe. Also, tell them to attend my next webinars. But you can tell them that, but you can't tell them that I said it was okay to leave your orange netting. And here's the reason why. What are the rules in your building? If you're in a condo, you cannot arbitrarily put orange netting and then it doesn't match with the look of the building, so somebody from the outside can look and say, wow, what is that? That looks like that place is under construction or whatever. So I understand the need for that. So my advice would be to go back to the manager and say, okay, I got the letter, but I have an unsafe condition. What do I use? What can you approve so I can take down my orange netting and put something else in its place so I have more protection. So throw it back at them and tell them that, and it's not, I know that it's a dog, but what if it was a kid? What if there was a small kid? So that's not a safe condition, although there's no requirement for the building to do anything because that condition is considered grandfathered in. But I would ask, I would say, well, tell me, what I should put. Do I put can I put something else? Maybe not orange netting, but maybe a different type of netting, or maybe some other type of material. And if it doesn't match, I can paint it to match the building, or come up with some options so that it's easier for them to consider it. If you don't give them any options, they just might say no, take it down, and that's the end of that. So just keep in communication with them, and then see what you can do. The orange netting, by the way, is actually temporary construction netting to use. They use it for barricade purposes and all that. That's not, and not very eye appealing. And the reason why it's yellow, and there's some, I mean, orange, there's some that's yellow or orange, there's even some that's green. um, that's to denote that it's a construction zone, basically. So it's temporary only, it's not permanent. So let me see, I've had other people put up some other things. Other buildings, I know they put plexiglass sheets so you can see through it. So from the road, it doesn't look like it's a different color. But then, of course, you have to get permission and approval from your property manager. So, yeah, I hope we're all good. Okay, Martin, anything else?
Yeah, we've got one last one from the chat here. Says, I noticed many new buildings, especially hotels, have glass railings. What is your opinion of the glass railings, and are they strong enough?
Interesting. Okay, so um, when buildings were first built, they never had glass for railing, like 60s, 70s, some 80s maybe. But then now, um, more expensive, and especially to take advantage of the view. I've seen a lot of condos and hotels being built with glass railing. Now, um, it's not all glass. The panels are glass, but if you look closely at these, the posts are made of metal or other kind of material, and not glass. And by the way, the glass they're using is stronger glass than, say, house window type glass, because it has to withstand the wind, the flex, and other factors. So it's it's safe, and the loading is calculated so that it's a safe product to use. But the key to the whole glass railing issue is the base and the framework, and it has to be solid. And most of the ones that I've inspected are pretty solid. The glass is thick. The whole structure doesn't move at all, and it's solid enough. Now they have to design it to withstand wind factor loads such as a hurricane, or stronger winds. So the very nature of having to conform with the wind code, the glass and the whole framing structure of the railing has to be pretty much solid. So I haven't seen too many shoddy workmanship or flimsy glass panels. I've seen some of these on houses that have views, but not on commercial buildings such as hotels or condos or even office buildings. But the reason for the glass is, of course, to take advantage of the view, which is a nice thing. But you want to make sure it's solid, and then it has to always be inspected, because a lot of times you have nice tile on these balcony lanais, and you have your railing posts there, and eventually that grout around the post starts cracking, and so that has to be maintained. So no matter how new these building materials come up with, there's always a repair and maintenance factor. So good questions. I'm happy to entertain them. And do we have any other last minute questions before we sign off?
No, no, Lance, that's it. We've had some really good questions today. Appreciate
Yeah.
it. Thanks.
Okay. Well, on behalf of Martin and I, Construction Management Inspection, Ask the Building Expert, we thank you for attending our webinar. We invite you to future webinars. It's always fun, especially, my fun part is actually, my most fun part is answering the questions because it's exciting. Sometimes I might get a little caught off guard, but I'll be happy to answer. And then, if I don't know the answer, I'll surely find out and I'll get back to you, or maybe I'll give the answer at the next webinar. So once again, thank you everyone for attending, and we'll see you at the next webinar. See you later. Bye.